Hello and welcome back to the program. This is Doug Foresta. I am so glad to be back with Maxine Suka, Director of Workforce Operations, Strategic Initiatives for KRA. And welcome to the Hub. Maxine, always a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you so much, Doug. I'm always so excited to be on these episodes. And now that we're on the Hub, I'm excited about the content that we're going to be bringing to our listeners.
I am as well. So today we're going to be talking about Workforce Development Month. And September is Workforce Development Month. I thought where we could start, because we were chatting a little bit before we started recording, and I learned some things that I didn't know. So perhaps you could just share with people about, what is Workforce Development Month? How did it come about? Can you say a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. I think as workforce development professionals, it's always good to know just kind of the history and the purpose and the origin of months special to us, like the month of September. So what I would like to start is, just to kind of let everybody know about, if you have not heard about this premier membership association and organization, it's called the National Association of Workforce Development Professionals, also known as NAWDP. That was the organization back in 2005 that had been very intentional about raising the awareness for workforce development professionals and also for the workforce industry as a whole. I know for our listeners and those that have just, tuned in and subscribed to, if you've never heard of the workforce development industry as a whole, there's been some intentionality about raising awareness. And so with NAWDP and their organization, they are a premier membership or association. They've kind of plugged into the workforce development industry and raising awareness of Workforce Development Month. They've originally celebrated this since 2005, when the inception of it and the concept of it, they started celebrating it during the month of May at their annual conferences. And so, with all of the NAWDP members and just the community at large, those celebrations really were whether they're specifically project-based, community-based, or really focused on in the political kind of atmosphere and raising awareness for these types of programs that we are operating from the federal, state, and local level. That was really the intention of Workforce Development Month. And it just was celebrated at the NAWDP annual conferences in May. And I would just add, Doug, that most recently in 2022, the U.S. Senate actually passed a resolution naming September Workforce Development Month. And so now that is really kind of how and why we start celebrating Workforce Development Month in the month of September, as opposed to when we initially started in May.
So good to know. I would bet that so many workforce professionals don't know that history. So I think it's good to know. And then let's talk about why this is important, right? Because I think that's one of the things that we definitely want to get across here today, is that this is important, and it's not just a like a token kind of thing, right? Mm-hmm. So say a little bit about the importance of celebrating Workforce Development Month and why it matters for workforce professionals.
Mm-hmm. No, I think we've mentioned this before, Doug, and I know in several of our episodes before, is that there's dignity in all work, and the type of work that we do within this great nation, sometimes it tends to get overlooked, by other larger organizations, other larger programs. And what our intention is, and why we want to celebrate Workforce Development Month, because we have all of these professionals in this workforce development industry that are, whether they're funded federally, locally, or by the state, or from different county or regions with special types of funds to put people back to work. We want to be able to raise awareness and highlight their efforts. And really, they're making an impact. And that's really what's so rewarding about this industry, is you're really making a positive impact on not just an individual's life, but it's the ecosystem of just kind of how we work together in your local region, community, and really kind of showcasing how your state is able to really manage its current economy and labor force, and so we're really kind of tapping into that ecosystem of work. And this is really just the avenue to highlight the hard work of professionals that are in this industry and really are making it a living to help others, raise the bar in finding sustainable work and employment for them and their households. So that's really the crux of why it's so important. And you and I know, if you're on the daily grind all the time, and this type of work is very taxing because people have a variety of different barriers that hinder them from obtaining sustainable work. And so really trying to liaison, to leverage resources with other organizations, to really try to make this thing work for the individual that's sitting in front of them. We know that it takes a lot of work, which is why it's so rewarding, at the end of that journey, once they've obtained sustainable employment, it's a celebration overall, and so that's really what we want to be able to highlight when it comes to Workforce Development Month, is the workforce heroes, as we would dub them, or the individuals that really serve these people, the people in the communities that they're respectfully in.
We hear all the time, at least I hear this all the time from workforce organizations across the country, we're the best kept secret in our community. Right? We don't want to be the best kept secret.
No, we want people to know about it. That's why we're doing this. It's like, we need to raise awareness of the type of work that we do, and so that people can really tap into the system. It's we have good people at the helm that's really moving a lot of these efforts forward on the ground, and it's touched the lives of a lot of American workers. And so the more people we have in the system that can really benefit, the better return of investment from these federal dollars that we are receiving, even from the state and locally, and we can really kind of keep the system going.
And as far as, let's get into the how, right? So we talked about why it matters. Let's get into the how. So one of the things that you shared with me as well is that you don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? I mean, you could do all kinds of creative things, but you can learn from others that are doing this all over the country. So say a little bit about that.
Oh, that's great. I mean, that's like taking me way back to our San Diego operation days. We've had a really innovative and creative team where, and for our listeners, if you don't know, San Diego in the month of September is known for Comic-Con. So it's really this huge gathering of all these kind of comic artists, if you would, and they all come together for a Comic-Con convention in San Diego, and that's usually in the month of September. And so what we've done with our kind of innovative, creative minds, and working together, was let's create this special event in San Diego that comes right after Comic-Con, but let's focus specifically on employers. It's just a very different way to do a job fair or a career fair, where we would look for employers in high and in demand industries that are actually hiring on, they're looking for folks to hire on the spot. And let's just convene all of them together in this event that we're calling Jobacon. So
I love that name.
A play off of Comic-Con, it's Jobacon. And so this is really where it's a larger, more intentional event, where we would host it in the beautiful space and venue in downtown San Diego on the 9th floor of the downtown public library, the central library that they have there.
Nice.
And it's overlooking Petco Park. It's a beautiful venue. We have all of these employers that are present there. We have our wonderful team, of workforce development professionals that would be present there as well. So as people are interacting and interviewing with employers, you have the workforce development professionals that are reviewing resumes on the spot, providing folks with tips, that they would need to do as they're meeting with some of these employers. And we would have people walk out with jobs, with interviews scheduled. It was a wonderful Jobacon event. And so with that particular concept, we've celebrated that annually in San Diego. And what we've been doing to really just kind of raise awareness of Workforce Development Month is you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You could either get plugged in with other partner organizations that you collaborate with that do whether similar type events, or you could create your own. I'd also like to highlight some of our, this year, as far as some of our projects in within KRA that have celebrated Workforce Development Month. I know with the projects that we have in the DC area and kind of in partnership with the Human Services Department, they every week for the entire month of September have really specifically been intentional on bringing these special kind of community outreach events and doing these special community outreach events every single week. And that's really to raise awareness of what they do, what types of services that we're able to offer the people, and to just let the community know that we are here, however it would make sense to them to get plugged into our system. That's really just kind of what we want to be able to raise awareness of as well. There is also, we have talked about it, Doug, as we're looking at all the programmatic and the operational pieces of celebrating Workforce Development Month and creating these wonderful events to let, individuals know what we do. It really is also an avenue to get your political officials involved, so whether that's in your local area, and NAWDP actually has this wonderful workforce development toolkit, that really spells everything out, that has templates for your local projects. If you wanted to, submit a letter or a memorandum to your local, elected officials to let them know, hey, this is what this is the type of program that we're operating in your area, to invite them to come to your space, whether that's in the form of doing an open house or just to meet and greet. They have this toolkit that's readily available. And so that's really, for this year, how KRA has kicked off our Workforce Development Month celebration is really in partnership with NAWDP. So we had Kim Meadows, who's kind of the NAWDP's training advisor and liaison. She partnered with us, and we got all of our program leaders together, and we talked shop about what are the different things and ideas that folks had to celebrate Workforce Development Month. We provided folks with the resources and the tools that they needed using NAWDP's toolkit, but then also just kind of having the platform and the space to share creative ideas that would work for folks in their individual locations. And I think the other project that I'd like to highlight too is really in Chicago, where, we talk about programs, operations, events. And in Chicago, they really took it as that moment to just kind of pause and focus on their team members to rejuvenate themselves. So it was really this one day an intentional day of relaxation, rejuvenation, kind of to kick that restart button with their teams. And they really just did a painting with a purpose session with their team. And, that was really to really highlight the workforce heroes. That was, those are other ways that other projects and other locations would be able to celebrate Workforce Development Month. So people were doing a lot of social media kind of promotions and different types of themes that were going on social media throughout the month of September, which was amazing and great. NAWDP was highlighting, they had impact stories. They were highlighting workforce heroes. And I've been mentioning workforce heroes. So if anyone is interested in doing that, like they're in this toolkit that NAWDP has, there's a way to just highlight in your local organization or wherever you're at the workforce hero that you would like to, recommend and promote out. And that's just kind of how that channel worked. So there's a lot of different ways, Doug, that I would say that other projects and local areas have celebrated Workforce Development Month, and KRA has been very, very proud to get plugged into, those avenues and to really work very closely and hand in hand with NAWDP on this general awareness and pushing this information out to the masses. So that way, not only do they know about the work that we do and the impact that we have in our local communities, but really the importance of work and how rewarding it can be, just by helping individuals find sustainable employment for them and their households. That's really the lifeline and the bloodline of the system.
Yeah, gosh, there's so much here I want to jump into. I guess the first thing I want to say is that the idea of being intentional, like what I hear in that is, that the organizations can be really intentional about making the most of Workforce Development Month. And it can be a form of self-care. It's a form of advocacy. It's a form of community outreach. It's a way to, I think, strengthen collaboration with community partners. right? I mean, there's so many ways that you can utilize Workforce Development Month. So it's really cool to hear the things. I wanted to ask you that you kind of, you said it, but you didn't explain what it was. The painting with a purpose. Can you explain to our
Oh,
listeners what
yes.
that is? Yeah,
Yeah, so painting with a purpose. So that's like, that really truly is a form of self-care. And so
yeah.
obviously what they ended up doing was we had the group, the local group in Chicago just kind of get together over food. Who doesn't like gathering over, right? And to just kind of focus on just painting. And when it comes to painting, there really isn't any right or wrong way of what it is that you're trying to create. It's just that internal artist that you have in you. Some people like myself, I know that I am horrible at drawing anything at all.
I'm
Like,
right there. I'm right there with
I
you,
can
Maxine.
envision it. And like events like that kind of tend to intimidate me. But I think what I really do want to be able to give that team a shout out, because it really wasn't an opportunity for them to interact in a different way than they normally would on a day-to-day basis. It was planned with intention to make sure that individuals are relaxed and that can kind of bring them to that space where they can reflect and just kind of paint whatever it is that they are thinking about, just kind of paint the strokes of the paintbrush, and just being together, being all together in the room, and just the attitude shifting and the mindset shifting of individuals and what they have perceived certain individuals to be like, or, it was just a really great way to get to know the team a little bit better in a very different setting, but with the intentionality on, let's just reset. Let's use this time to reset. Let's paint with a purpose. Let's eat together, and
Yeah.
let's not plan out a whole new event, but let's just gather and just be together. So that, I think that was just really a great form of self-care.
I love that. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure people understood, because
Yeah.
I think a lot of organizational leaders might listen to this, or not even leaders, just people in an organization, and say, "Hey, this is really cool. Let's do this."
Mhm.
So like you said, I mean, we're celebrating workforce professionals and the great work that they do, but we're also ultimately, as you said, we're celebrating the dignity of work, right?
Mhm.
It's and let me ask you this. I mean, my understanding is, because of the great resignation, because of how many jobs are out there, the people that are still struggling to find jobs, many of them have barriers, right? They have probably more barriers than we've seen.
Mhm.
Um, I'm wondering if you talk about that a little bit. I know I'm putting you on the spot
Yeah,
here about that,
no,
but yeah,
I think, there really is dignity in all work. And we can see
yeah,
prior to the great resignation, or however we want to be able to dub that particular movement, the economy, the local economy changes. There's ebbs and flows in the local economy. We know that the tables have turned. We've talked about that in a previous episode, where, now you have the job seeker that is being extremely intentional, with all of the different options that they have at their fingertips. You have employers that are now looking at different ways to change up their ways of business, just
yeah,
looking at different incentivized programs, or how can they incentivize workers to want to stay, given the change of the labor market and just kind of the job in and of itself and the way that we work, right?
yeah,
But the one thing that we mustn't overlook as well are, there are individuals that fall within this digital gap. So just as we're moving very quickly, utilizing a lot of digital components and moving things and shifting them online, and your work schedule is now changed, where you can either telecommute or have some sort of hybrid schedule. Some folks, that's probably not an option for them. And so we have to also be mindful of the individuals where, some of the labor work. So within construction, you're looking at farmers, local agriculture, and that's a little bit different. It's not like they could probably show up on a Zoom meeting for, a team meeting if they're located elsewhere, but actual manpower, it still needs to be done. And so,
yeah.
we are focused a lot of our programs, if you would, were focused on different areas to help workers. And it's not like we want to be able to just silo out specific types of high demand industries. It's really important to place folks in high demand industries and sectors because ultimately you want them to find sustainable employment. There are some industries that might not meet that high in demand criteria, but it is work, and it is the preference of the individual that wants to work in those industries. And so it really is, our due diligence to find out ways of how we would be able to really help these families, stay within a preferred industry, but then also be able to provide different options. Maybe within this industry, there's a particular option where they could still do what they love to do and be happy and still make the money that they need to make. So that way they're not just working to, they're just like living to work, but they're actually like working and living at the same time.
So we're recording this in the beginning of October, right? And, who knows when people will listen to this, they'll listen to it throughout the year. How early is too early, or how early should, if I'm a workforce organization, when should I start thinking about, planning these events and getting ready for September?
Yeah, I mean, you can plan. I could say that you can start planning. That Workforce Development Month is in September. Like now we know it's every September.
Right.
Depending, I would just say, depending on whatever event it is that you are planning, if it is something where it is a completely new event, you have never planned it before, like I would really start early to try to lay the groundwork and the framework to make sure that it is a seamless kind of event, right?
Yeah.
But for other organizations where you already know, for example, San Diego, JavaCon is something we celebrate every September.
Right.
You've already laid out the framework and the foundation. So we already know that that's what we can anticipate. It's a part of our calendar of events already. You promote it out months before it happens. So, it would just really depend on the organization and what event it is that they are planning. Some folks, I mean, I give it up to them, the last minute planners that are able to really still get everything in and very seamless, like within a month's time frame, probably even shorter than that they are the masterminds of planning, and I totally give them kudos for doing that as well, because you do have individuals that don't want to miss out on the opportunity of celebrating and just will jump right on it once they receive the information and just start moving on from there.
And I would imagine as a workforce organization, one of the things you can do is to really think about how do we want to make the most of this event, right? Like we can use it to re-energize our staff. We can use it as a time to reflect on the work that we do. Because as you said, a lot of times as workforce professionals, you're so busy because the work is so challenging and demanding and constant that you don't get a chance to take that step back. And then also, of course, to use it as a way to let the community know what's going on, celebrate work. So I would imagine as an organization, you can also take that time to take a step back and say, how do we want to use this?
Yes, to be intentional, to be strategic, to change the narrative. I mean, like I mentioned earlier in the episode, it's, some organizations unfortunately don't have the time or make the time to sit at local workforce development board meetings, to listen in on the agenda, the ability to change the narrative of, these are the funds that we are receiving locally. What can we do to not only just be innovative and creative, but really strategic in implementing programs that are benefiting our community, and at the same time it would really have a high ROI back to the efforts that are being put into that kind of systematic operation. So it's the ability also for strategic thinkers and leaders, and not even just leaders, anybody that's working within this profession, to think outside of the box, have that moment of pause to say, maybe this would be the time that I could probably conduct an open house of one of my sites that I haven't had the opportunity to do an open house yet, and invite my local elected officials to come and start working on changing the narrative and making sure that they are aware of the fact that there is this workforce development industry, that we have a really high backing of other collaborative partners in the community that they probably touch in different ways, so let's change the narrative and bring them to the table and raise awareness in that regard, for our local elected officials to really help us push the concept and just the system overall of workforce development to another level. And that's really just kind of our step by step, in raising the awareness, being intentional, pausing and reflecting, and really making the work that we do, because it's very meaningful, just bringing that to a completely different level by changing the narrative.
I love it. And I think you've just given listeners so much to think about and a lot to do in the next year to get ready. Like you said, some people, they might do it by mid-August, but I think, it's great to get started earlier if you can. So Maxine, I just want to, you mentioned NAWDP. Any links you want to send people? We could put them in the show notes as well. Do you want to direct people anywhere about, any resources?
Yeah, sure. I think the most easiest thing would be to just go to NAWDP's website. So it's NAWDP.org. So that's NAWDP.org. The workforce toolkit is there. If you go on their drop down on the actual website, you'll be able to see their resources and events. And Workforce Development Month is its own kind of page. So folks would be able to tap into that and really see and read about the history and the purpose of it. I would, in partnership with NAWDP, I really would, recommend that folks, visit them and visit the website specifically and read more about Workforce Development Month. And, Doug, like you mentioned, we're recording this already. It's already October. October is here. And, we just tee up our listeners to, let them know that for the month of October, this is a national disability. This is a National Disability Employment Awareness Month,
Right.
And that is also a Department of Labor kind of intentional focus for all workforce development professionals as well. And so there's always work, and the work is here. And we want to be able to make sure that we not only are raising awareness of the Workforce Development Month, but just kind of the work that we do on a month-to-month basis, on a daily basis. And so we'll just kind of tee up our listeners to kind of hear what's to come regarding National Disability Employment Awareness Month.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you, Maxine. And yes, for all our listeners, stay tuned. We're going to be talking about that. Again, Maxine, thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much, Doug, for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you. And to everyone, we'll see you on the next episode of The Hub.